Imagine you are brought in to consult on a high-stakes, highly publicized logistical operation.
Right, like a total nightmare scenario.
Exactly. The supply chain has fractured, the local environment is chaotic, and the chief project manager is currently having a very public breakdown in the middle of the town square.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and one more detail. That project manager is a 1,000-pound polar bear who is desperately trying to squeeze his torso into a tiny polka-dotted pair of penguin pajamas.
Wait.
I mean, yes. Meanwhile, the workforce is actively sabotaging the operation by, brushing their teeth with marshmallow fluff.
Well, that is a textbook operational meltdown.
Right.
You are looking at total systemic failure driven by a profound misallocation of resources.
Right.
And a complete breakdown in standard operating procedures.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are analyzing a document that looks, at first glance, like a brightly colored, whimsical story about animals and sleepwear.
Yeah, the fluffy illustrations.
Exactly. It's called Mission Monkeys and the Polar Bears Pajama Parade. But for you listening, do not let those fluffy illustrations fool you.
Definitely not.
If you look under the hood, the fictional setting of Snuggle Snow Square is operating like a collapsing Fortune 500 company.
It genuinely is. I mean, our mission today for this deep dive is to unpack what one of the characters, a monkey named Mila, astutely labels a bedtime brain boost.
A bedtime brain boost. I love that phrase.
Right, because this text is actually a masterclass in cognitive triage. It strips away all the complex jargon of systems theory.
Yeah.
And it forces us to look at how we as humans learn to organize chaos. And it does this through three fundamental pillars: visual patterns, spatial sorting, and chronological routine.
And the catalyst for all of this cognitive heavy lifting is that inciting incident I just mentioned.
The polar bear.
Yes. The host of the parade, the severely stressed polar bear, is just groaning in the crisp, sleepy chill of the square.
Which is so relatable.
Totally. A giant banner is flapping overhead announcing the polar bear's first ever pajama parade. But, the parade is paralyzed.
Because the system is broken.
Exactly. Everyone's clothing is mixed up, the sizes are scrambled. And to top it all off, we discover that a monkey named Mick has put winter mittens on his feet.
Which is a beautiful, albeit frustrating example of a user misinterpreting the interface of their own equipment.
The mittens on the feet.
Right. I mean, the resources exist in the environment, but they are being applied with zero regard for their intended anatomical function.
Right in the middle of this disaster, a sparkly scroll floats down from above with a mission alert.
A literal mandate from above.
Basically, yeah. It is essentially an executive mandate from the universe. The monkeys are tasked with 3 explicit directives: fix the pajama mix-up, sort the sizes, and spot the patterns to save the parade.
So it's a triage protocol. When an organizational landscape devolves into diagnostic muddy waters, you just cannot solve everything at once.
You have to start somewhere.
Exactly. The scroll forces the monkeys to isolate the variables. To restore order to this chaotic environment, they have to start with the most immediate, superficial layer of the crisis.
Right. Because before these animals can even think about putting the correct clothes on, they have to fix the spatial cueing issue.
The line.
Yes, you cannot launch a parade without a functional line. But the lineup they have is a visual nightmare.
It really is.
According to the text, the cue currently goes like this. We have a striped seal, then a polka-dotted penguin,
Okay.
then another striped seal, then another polka-dotted penguin, striped, polka-dotted, striped, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, fluffy unicorn pajamas.
What's fascinating here is what developmental psychologists and computer scientists alike call the pattern problem.
The pattern problem.
Yes, this is the very first clue they have to solve, and it is entirely visual. Recognizing patterns is, well, it's the absolute foundational step of logic.
Before you can build anything else.
Exactly. Before you can build or troubleshoot a complex system, you have to be able to identify the underlying rhythm of a simple one.
Right.
And the monkeys are looking at a system that has established a very clear binary rhythm.
It's a binary sequence. Dum, 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 dum. Striped, dotted, striped, dotted.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It sets a neurological expectation. And then the fluffy unicorn appears.
The glitch.
Right? The fluffy unicorn shatters that established binary rhythm. In any system, whether it's a pajama parade, a manufacturing assembly line, or an algorithm, an anomaly of that magnitude stops the system from functioning.
It creates acute cognitive dissonance.
It does. It's a glitch. So the monkey Mia squints at it and explicitly identifies the error, stating, That breaks the pattern.
She spots it right away.
Yeah, and then her counterpart, Milo, confirms the governing rule of their system. It should be striped, polka dotted, striped, polka dotted.
Right.
So Milo physically intervenes. He moves the unicorn to the back of the line, restoring the visual pattern. And, the text notes the crowd gives soft cheers.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I actually have some serious pushback on how Mia and Milo handle this fluffy unicorn situation.
Oh, really? Push back on the monkeys.
Yes. I mean, Mia squints, identifies the break in the pattern, and Milo's immediate solution is to just drag the unicorn all the way to the back of the line.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. But wait, why move it to the very back? Why are we so quick to push anomalies out of sight rather than adapting our patterns? Why not let it start a new pattern? Striped, dotted unicorn, striped, dotted unicorn.
You're critiquing the rigidity of the system they imposed, which is a fair critique of long-term organizational design. But you have to view this through the lens of crisis management.
But doesn't that mirror what we do in our own lives?
How do you mean?
I want you, the listener, to think about how you organize your daily schedule. We all love our little striped and polka-dotted routines, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. We love predictability.
Right. You wake up, you drink coffee, you clear your inbox, you attend a standing meeting. Striped, dotted, and striped, dotted. It feels safe.
It does.
But then an unexpected task pops up. A total fluffy unicorn of a problem that just doesn't fit neatly into your binary calendar.
There's an emergency.
Yeah, sudden client escalation, a minor crisis at your kid's school, a last-minute errand. What is our first instinct? We do exactly what Mia and Milo did.
We push it away.
We push that fluffy unicorn task all the way to the end of the day. We tell ourselves, I'll deal with that at 5 p.m. It's messing up my flow right now.
Yeah, that's very true.
Rather than integrate the anomaly and dynamically adapt our routine, we shove it out of sight to maintain the fragile illusion of perfect order.
That is a profound parallel. We preserve the existing pattern at the expense of ignoring reality, at least temporarily.
Right.
However, from a cognitive load perspective, the monkeys actually made the correct call for their specific situation.
You think so?
I do. Because when a system is entirely overwhelmed, like when everyone is groaning and wearing mittens on their feet, the brain defaults to the simplest known pattern.
It just doesn't have the capacity.
Exactly. It literally lacks the bandwidth to process the integration of a new variable. Moving the unicorn to the back doesn't eliminate the anomaly, true, but it reduces the immediate visual noise.
It calms things down.
Right. Establishing that baseline visual order was the necessary first step to lower the collective panic in the square. You stabilize the patient before you try to cure the underlying disease.
That is a fair point. They stabilize the visual cue. But solving the visual layout is only half the battle, right?
Right, because a perfectly straight line is entirely useless if the individual standing in it are wearing the wrong equipment.
Exactly. Which brings us to the immediate physical crisis in the text. We shift from organizing the abstract idea of a pattern to manipulating physical reality.
The size-sorting snowbank.
Yes. We arrive at the size-sorting snowbank, and the visual the text paints is just striking. Imagine a colossal, snowy heap of pajamas piled up in the middle of the square.
Just a massive pile.
An unmitigated mountain of mismatched fabric. You have tiny mittens buried inside medium slippers, all tangled up underneath huge, fuzzy robes. Total chaos. Mila, taking charge of the spatial organization, instructs them to sort everything by size. So they dig into the snowbank and start creating distinct, segregated piles.
Right.
A small pile specifically for the penguins, a medium pile for the foxes, and a large pile for the polar bears.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, sorting isn't just about neatness. It's about functional scale.
Functional scale.
Right. A massive pile of mixed-up clothing is functionally useless because the caloric and cognitive effort required to extract the correct item heavily outweighs the item's utility.
It's too much work to find your pajamas.
Exactly. By categorizing the physical objects by size, she is matching the scale of the resource directly to the scale of the end user.
Which leads to the greatest revelation in the entire story.
The polar bear.
Yes. The polar bear looks at these newly sorted piles, gasps as this giant light bulb goes off, and says, "Oh, I was trying to squeeze into penguin pajamas."
Which perfectly explains his paralysis and groaning at the beginning.
Right.
Because a system, no matter how visually pleasing or perfectly patterned it is, will inevitably collapse if the physical resources are not distributed by appropriate scale. You cannot apply a micro-scale solution to a macro-scale entity.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because the text explores the inverse of that problem, too.
Oh, with Mick.
Yes, we have Mick the monkey who put the mittens on his feet earlier, and Mick decides to experiment. He pulls one of the giant fuzzy robes from the large pile, wraps it around his tiny frame, and says, I feel like a walking marshmallow.
He is swallowed by the excess capacity of the resource.
Yes. And for you listening, this is where we have to talk about Parkinson's Law.
Ah, yes.
Parkinson's Law dictates that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion. But it applies to resources and cognitive bandwidth, too. Think about your own workday.
It's the same principle.
Trying to force a massive, complex, polar bear-sized project into a tiny, 15-minute, penguin-sized time slot never works. You just end up frustrated, groaning at your desk like the bear in the square.
Because the scale is wrong.
But the flip side is just as dangerous. If you take a tiny, simple, monkey-sized task, like sending a routine email, and you block out a massive 3-hour chunk of your afternoon to do it, you end up completely floundering.
You overthink it.
You overthink the email, you rewrite it 6 times, you get distracted, you are meek in the giant robe, the task expands to fill the massive space you gave it, and you lose all efficiency. You become a walking marshmallow.
That is a brilliant application of the principle. In business, we see this constantly with budget allocation.
Oh, totally.
Give a department 10 times the budget they actually need for a small project, and they don't finish it faster. They buy unnecessary software, they hire redundant consultants, and essentially become a walking marshmallow of corporate bloat.
That is such a good way to put it.
Spatial sorting, whether it's pajamas in a snowbank or hours in a workday calendar, is fundamentally about creating constraints. You must strictly match the size of the resource to the size of the actual need.
Okay, so the visual cue is locked in with a perfect binary pattern. The physical resources are scaled and distributed perfectly.
Everyone has their correct clothes.
Right. You would assume they are finally ready to march. But a beautifully patterned line of perfectly dressed animals still cannot function if the individuals are fundamentally executing the wrong tasks.
No, they cannot.
We hit the final and most catastrophic hurdle of the story. The text brilliantly calls it the bedtime routine rumble.
Yes. The introduction of time, sequence, and procedural logic. This is the exact inflection point where most sophisticated organizational systems fail.
And the chaos is spectacular. I mean, the parade is moments away from starting, but the actions happening in the square are entirely unhinged.
It's wild.
You have a seal who is aggressively brushing its teeth, but it's using marshmallow fluff instead of toothpaste.
Wow.
You have a penguin who is trying to take a deep sleep nap before it has even put its pajamas on.
Out of order.
And then you have this moose who is already fully dressed in glow-in-the-dark bunny slippers, standing in the snow, wide awake, shouting, "Party time!" at the top of his lungs.
This raises an important question about algorithmic sequencing. It is a common fallacy to believe that having the correct elements present in an environment is enough to achieve a goal.
What do you mean?
Well, the intention to sleep is present in the square. The intention to practice dental hygiene is present. The intention to get dressed is present. But the sequence of execution is entirely corrupted.
So what does this all mean? I always compare this to baking.
Baking.
Yes, think about it. You can have the highest quality ingredients sitting on your kitchen island. The flour, the eggs, the sugar are all perfectly measured. They are size sorted, to use Mila's framework.
Okay, I follow.
But if you put the dry flour into the hot oven, bake it for 30 minutes, and then attempt to stir the raw eggs into the burnt flour after you take it out, you don't get a cake. You get a disaster, because the order of operations was violated. The penguin napping before putting on pajamas is skipping a crucial step in the algorithm of bedtime.
I would argue it's even more severe than baking. Yeah, because when you ruin a cake, the failure is contained. What we are seeing in Snuggle Snow Square is a cascading failure, much like you would see in aviation or surgical environments.
Oh, wow. Cascading failure.
Think about why the aviation industry and surgical rooms rely so heavily on mandatory checklists. A pilot cannot just flip the required switches in whatever order they feel like.
Right, that would be bad.
Very bad. If they deploy the landing gear at the wrong altitude or ignite the engines before clearing the intake valves, the plane doesn't just fail to fly, it actively destroys its own infrastructure.
It crashes.
Exactly. In algorithmic sequences, skipping a step creates a cascading error where step 3 actively works against step 4. The penguin attempting to nap before putting on pajamas isn't just doing things out of order. The act of sleeping prevents the act of dressing from ever occurring.
It's a complete system lockup. And what about the seal using marshmallow fluff to brush its teeth? Where does that fit into the algorithm?
Well, that is a classic representation of a category error.
A category error.
Yes. In cognitive science and computer programming,
Mhm.
a category error occurs when a system attempts to execute an operation on the wrong type of data. The seal is running a highly specific hygiene protocol, but it is feeding culinary data the marshmallow fluff, which is presumably meant for a dessert step into that hygiene protocol.
And it crashes the system.
Exactly. Which is exactly why Mia, our monkey protagonist, steps in with the ultimate crisis management tool. She doesn't just yell at them to stop.
What does she do?
She holds up a physical checklist.
Yeah.
And the checklist is explicit, rigid, and sequential. Step 1, brush teeth. Step 2, put on pajamas. Step 3, read a book. Step 4, lights out.
And she insists, and this is a direct quote from the text, in that order.
Right. She is implementing an external algorithm to override their flawed internal logic. Having the right intentions isn't enough, and having the right resources isn't enough.
It's the order.
A chronological sequence is the binding agent. It is the only thing that transforms the ambient chaos, the giggling, the inappropriate use of marshmallow fluff, the shouting of party time into measurable order.
Which is yawns, basically.
Exactly, and the text verifies this success, noting that the giggles are swiftly replaced by contagious yawns.
The system finally reaches equilibrium. The ultimate bedtime brain boost is achieved. The visual patterns are fixed in the queue, the physical sizes are sorted in the snowbank, and the chronological routines are sequentially locked down by Mia's checklist.
It's a beautiful resolution.
It really is. And the resulting imagery is genuinely lovely. The polar bear's pajama parade officially begins. The animals waddle, they tiptoe, and they shuffle sleepily through the crisp snow while soft music plays.
Very peaceful.
It is a stark, peaceful contrast to the groaning and shouting we endured at the beginning of the text.
They have moved from a state of high entropy to a state of low entropy.
They really have. The polar bear, no longer stressed, smiles and declares to the monkeys that they didn't just save the parade, they saved bedtime itself.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, even Mick the monkey, the agent of chaos who started all of this by wearing mittens on his feet and drowning in giant robes, stretches his arms and admits that he is actually sleepy now.
The external routine successfully regulated his internal state.
Exactly. And Milo wraps up the operation by declaring, "Mission accomplished. Sweet dreams, Snow Square."
It is a remarkably effective distillation of complex organizational principles. If we look at the core takeaway, which the text explicitly hands to us at the conclusion, staying organized makes everything run smoothly, regardless of the context.
Even pajama parades.
Right. The underlying mechanics of organization do not change based on the seriousness of the event. Whether you are orchestrating a multi-million-dollar corporate merger or managing a silly pajama parade for mammals, the physics of logic remain the same.
It all relies on those three pillars.
Yes, recognizing simple visual patterns to establish a baseline of order, categorizing physical resources by scale to ensure utility without bloat, and enforcing a sequential routine to ensure the algorithm produces the intended result.
It is profound when you strip away the playful veneer. From a chaotic, mixed-up snowy square to a perfectly executed logistical operation, all achieved through the strict application of basic logic.
Absolutely.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave with you, the listener, today. We can sit here and easily laugh at the fictional polar bear trying to squeeze his massive 1,000-pound frame into tiny penguin pajamas.
Or the moose shouting party time.
Right. We can shake our heads at the moose shouting party time and his glow-in-the-dark slippers when the protocol clearly dictates sleep. But I want you to take a hard, unfiltered look at your own daily routines, your own calendar, your own ambitious projects. Where in your life right now are you desperately trying to force a fluffy unicorn into a rigid binary pattern where it clearly doesn't belong, instead of doing the hard work of adapting your system?
That's a great question.
Where are you playing the part of the walking marshmallow, allowing a tiny, simple task to expand and swallow 3 hours of your afternoon because you failed to create a boundary of scale? Or worse, where in your day are you essentially brushing your teeth with marshmallow fluff?
A category error.
Exactly. Where are you rushing, skipping a vital step in your own organizational checklist, introducing category errors into your workflow, and throwing your entire sequence into a cascading failure? The diagnostic X-ray of your own life might look murky and chaotic at first glance, but if you take a breath, isolate the variables, and start looking closely for the patterns, the sizes, and the sequence, the picture always becomes crystal clear. Until next time, keep diving deep.